Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The Gettysburg Address, one of Lincoln's most famous speeches, analyzed by third graders at Prairie Ridge Elementary. Here's our thoughts.
Abraham Lincoln was one busy man. He had to flee the slaves and he had to win the Civil War.
The Civil War began in 1861. It was Americans versus Americans, the South versus the North.
The Civil War was not going a little for the North. They had only won one battle out of 5 during the first 2 years. It was the Battle of Antietam on September 17, 1862.
In July 1863, the South moved into Pennsylvania near Gettysburg. In this terrible battle, 20,000 Southern soldiers were hurt or died, and 23,000 Northern soldiers were hurt or died.
The North won the Battle of Gettysburg. So many lost their lives. Gettysburg was going to be made into a cemetery.
A special ceremony was going to be held there to honor those who died.
On November 19th, Edward Everett was going to be the main speaker, but President Lincoln was asked to say a few words.
President Lincoln planned a speech. He wanted it to be short and to the point, and not just winning the war, but in learning how our founding fathers started the country.
Run by the people, for the people, and all people united, just like George Washington thought so many years ago. A special train took President Lincoln to Gettysburg.
The president was going in a parade to the battlefield to give his speech. But he had to wait because Mr. Everett had gone to the battlefield and hadn't come back yet.
Mr. Everett spoke for about 2 hours in his speech.
It was finally time for the president to give his speech. He stood on a platform in front of a crowd of 15,000 to 20,000 people and spoke for about 2 minutes.
Lincoln didn't think his speech went well since it was so short, but it was published in many newspapers.
It is now known as one of the most important speeches in our history.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Abraham Lincoln refers to George Washington beginning our country. He also refers to the Declaration of Independence and how all men are created equal.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of the war. We have come to dedicate a portion of the field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that our nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
President Lincoln's words meant that he is dedicating the field to all those who lost their lives in the war.
But in larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last. These dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Lincoln wants to be sure we will not forget the soldiers who risked or gave their lives for us, and we need to keep the government for the people, by the people, and so we won't perish. We must finish this civil war as one United States.
And with those words, we are now back to being the United States of America. Our country continues to face hardships, and if we can remember Lincoln's word and unite, we can endure anything that comes our way.
My Lord, no more. My Lord, Lord, I'll never turn back no more.